How's it going? So, the subject of this video is why cops are better on TV. Now, notice the wording here. I didn't say that cops on TV are perfect or ideal, just better. And I'm not talking about the show Cops, I'm talking about fictional shows, just to be clear. First off, for those not familiar with what I talk about on this channel, you need to understand the fact that just because something is against the law that's written by man does not mean it's immoral. And just because someone is told they can do something by that same accord does not make it moral. Go back and watch my video, A Challenge to My Left and Right Wing Friends, for a better understanding of these principles. But let's get into it. I could easily sum this video up with the response because they actually provide a service. And you could go back to whatever you're doing, but I'm not trying to do a TikTok video here, if that's even still allowed. Anyway, I don't really watch any of those cop shows, but I was recently watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which, whether or not you'd consider that a cop show, does have people in it pretending to be cops. And I made the remark, cops are only cool on TV. But what did I mean by that? Well, of course, it's a show. It can be funny, depending on your sense of humor, and it can have likable characters. Plus, it's fantasy, so I'm not constantly thinking how despicable these people are. One big difference I've also noticed between cops you normally see on TV and those you're more likely to encounter in real life is that most of the cops on TV are detectives versus just everyday beat cops. Now, aside from the obvious difference in attire, the contrast here is what they're actually doing. You could make the argument that these detectives are actually providing a valuable service by solving crimes that have real victims, rather than just writing checks in order to writing tickets in order to collect revenue for the government. Now, when I'm talking about a service here, I'm talking about something someone might actually be willing to pay for if they had the choice, and if all our money was not being taken from us without consent through taxes. Basically, in a voluntarist society, if someone you care about was murdered, you'd want the killer to be caught and you'd want there to be some kind of repercussions, right? So we could consider that a valuable service. I could also use an example from my own personal experience that happened recently. I had my car stolen. I talk more about this in a separate video, but let's just pretend that the cops did their job in this scenario and not only recovered the car, but caught the thief, who then was held liable to pay me back for all the expenses I incurred because of their stupidity, including stolen items, car rental, and car repairs. That would be a service worth paying for. Another big thing you see cops on TV doing, which I would not consider a service, is drug busts. They're always trying to catch this or that drug lord. Now, certainly if these drug lords are responsible for violent crimes like murder, there would likely be someone who would want them to answer for these crimes. But what about the actual drug dealing in and of itself? I think most of us have enough sense to know that there are certain drugs that can have a pretty bad effect on you, not only on your health, but also your cognition. So what if I say, well, since I consider this drug harmful, I don't think my neighbor should be allowed to do it. So I'm going to pay someone to go to his house, take his drugs away, and throw him in a cage. That's not within my right. I don't have the right to take property away from my neighbor, even if I think it's something he shouldn't have because it's harmful. Nor do I have the right to put him in a cage against his will, which means I also do not have the right to delegate that right to someone else, as you can't delegate a right you yourself do not have. Of course, if my neighbor is on drugs and he commits an act of violence on me, then he's responsible for that. But I have no right to dictate what he can or can't put into his body. And here we have the underlying problem with police officers. They're doing immoral things that they don't have the right to do, while under the impression that they do, because someone else who also does not have those rights has granted these people this imaginary thing called authority, which they believe gives them these rights. When you really think about it, how much sense does that make? One thing you don't normally see cops on TV doing is writing speeding tickets or harassing people for other victimless crimes, do you? Did you ever stop to think whether that's by design? I know even the most cop-loving people out there still get annoyed when they get pulled over for going 5 miles over the speed limit, having an expired registration, or whatever other bullshit thing they use solely for the purpose of generating revenue for the state. So in a show where cops are supposed to be the protagonists, you aren't seeing them do stupid things like that. And here's something you do see cops doing a lot on TV that you'll almost never see them doing in real life: actually preventing crimes from happening. I'm talking about real crimes with injured parties like murder, assault, rape, theft, etc. 9 times out of 10, and I don't know the actual statistic, it's probably even higher than that, the cops don't arrive to the scene of a crime until the damage has already been done. Unless you happen to have a cop sitting in their car right in front of your house, if someone breaks in and they're planning on robbing you or killing you, they're going to be long gone before the cops arrive, if you even have the chance to call them before the damage is done. Which is why cops will never be as effective as your ability and right to defend yourself and your home. Maybe in a bank robbery that turns into a hostage situation, if they happen to have a good negotiator, the cops can defuse the situation and catch the bad guys without anyone getting hurt. I looked up some statistics on this one, and according to HealingLaw.com, who obtained their statistics from the FBI, and you can take that for whatever it's worth, only 8% of hostage situations end with no injuries, while only 1% involve the death of a victim. So maybe if you're a victim in a hostage situation, you have a good chance of surviving, but you may not escape without injury, nor will your captor for that matter. How many stories have you heard, though, where people have gone to the police for help because they knew someone was after them and trying to hurt them or kill them, but the police refused to help them, saying that unless a crime has been committed, they can't intervene? We've all heard the phrase to serve and protect, but police are actually under no requirement by law to protect people. You could even look this up. So how much faith does this give you in cops? Are they really the heroes they're sometimes portrayed as on TV? Not only do they rarely provide any real value to the people they claim to serve and protect, but for all the immoral acts they commit, like arresting and jailing people for victimless crimes, they use the excuse, "I was just doing my job," to escape responsibility. And I don't think we even need to mention all the innocent people they've killed, as well as dogs. Cops have even been known to remark at how much they enjoy killing dogs. I'm not saying that the majority of them are that sick and twisted, but this is the kind of people the profession attracts. Even if you have someone who you'd like to say is a good cop, they've done immoral things, like it or not. I don't think it's a stretch to say there isn't a single cop out there who hasn't arrested someone for a victimless crime. They'll say the victim is the state or the city, etc. But sorry, an idea can't be a victim. They only consider it a victim because someone wrote something on a piece of paper saying that if you go a certain speed that you owe this money to the state or whatever. You can make the argument it's for our safety, but if there's no injured party, then is it really? Obviously, I'm not advocating going out there and driving like a maniac. We need to be conscientious and responsible for our actions, because the second you fuck up and hurt someone, you've created an injured party and a transgression against natural law. Even if I could go whatever speed I wanted to without being harassed by policy enforcers, most of the time I'd probably still go somewhere close to the speed limit. I'm not an idiot. I recognize that a few well-intending people did actually put a little thought into why the speed limits are the way they are. But with a little common sense, you really don't even need those as a guide. Out of consideration for people and their kids, I'm not going to go flying through a residential neighborhood at 60 miles per hour, nor do I need any law to tell me that it's prudent to slow down if the roads are wet or icy. And what about all the corruption in police forces? If we really had good cops, where are all the whistleblowers? There aren't, because they stick together. Even those who would actually speak out against their coworkers face grave consequences when they do. It's like a fraternity or a secret society, and I have no doubt it's set up that way. And look, this whole thing is something I've wrestled with. There's someone who's a friend of my mom's side of the family, and he's a retired cop. I've known him since I was a kid, and at that time he was still a cop, and I didn't really think anything of it because I had never thought about the moral implications. He's always been kind to me, and my oldest son took quite a liking to him as we'd gone out to eat together as a family many times. His wife, who's also a really good friend of the family, sees my Facebook posts, and although I try to keep it toned down a little, I've made comments about order following and the general immorality of police officers. I'm not going to lie, and I'm glad he's retired now, but if it ever came up, I may ask him if he ever thought about such things. The problem is the programming is so deeply ingrained that not only would you have to get through the whole cop programming, but the statist mindset as well in order to reach someone in that position. I'm not saying we shouldn't try. I think it's very important that we try to reach these people who more often than not seem to be segregated from society, perhaps by design. Some may say that tough love is the only way, and some may say kindness is the way. I'm not here to claim to know what's best in that regard, but I do know that the order followers are collectively responsible for keeping an unjust system running. They will be the last line of defense for a dying system should it ever come to that. So reaching them is critical. Anyway, those are some of the comparisons I wanted to make about TV cops versus real life cops and why they're so much better or less evil on TV. I'd be interested to know your thoughts and ideas about how to reach someone who's a police officer to get them to reconsider their choices in life, especially if you've already engaged with a police officer on this subject, or if you yourself are a police officer or former police officer, and what led you to where you are today. Hey, even if you just happened upon this video by accident and came here to set me straight, let's have a conversation. The only way we can learn from each other is by engaging in a civil manner with an open mind. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Until next time, take care.